opened it, it looked like you opened up something from Sherlock Holmes because of just the items that were in here. But this is our little man. And for those of you who realize that I've been collecting for about the last 20 years, got that in a backyard, and you could see that somebody had a very active cat because one of the sides of it's. But not only with that, but we have right behind Morris, which is painted blue, but shouldn't be blue, is a foot grinder from the herb shop that was here. And the foot grinder, so in the back we also have the bark that goes through it, has two long sides, and the middle has a cog to it. So the cog fits into the stone, and the person will sit in a chair and use that to grind larger branches into smaller ones. Then they would go into the other grinders and for the tea shop. What we also have next to Mars on this side is a couple items from, I guess I should go this way, huh? Let me go that way. Whoop, sorry. Remember, eat all of the donuts as possible, all of them. Okay, you guys, you need to have some more. You have to eat some more. Eat. There you go. Yeah, put them in your pocket. Eat. Okay, thank you. Eat. I love this one picture. It's of one of the missionaries that used to come into Chinatown. The two missionaries, you could tell by the kids' clothing that it was quite early in the area. They would take them up, go to the mission, and say that we'll tell you about God and give you a sandwich. So I always like, what is the kid? That kid, if you take a look at it. Because he's like looking, going, where the hell's the food? Then this is another photo we have that's here in Chinatown. And it's the Marxists. And what's so funny is we had a group from a Rotary come in, and a gentleman who was Chinese looked at this and started to cry. And I said, what's wrong? He goes, that's my mother. And I'd never seen this picture of her before. So I was asked to do a presentation to them, the Rotary group, a couple months later. So I made a copy of that because his daughter had taken a picture and it didn't come out. So I made a copy of that picture and gave it to him. But these are some other ones that we have of the area. Oops, this one's gotten stuck. I don't know why people do this to our stuff. So that's like the Liberty Garage. Do you remember the Liberty that was here? Oops. And then, this is the Tomorrow Restaurant on F Street. And this is what a lot of the restaurants used to look like. So here you go.
Was the Fuji Cafe down here?
The what?
The Fuji Cafe.
Yeah.
Did he actually cook with his feet?
Did he actually cook?
The myth was that he had like either a possum or a raccoon next to him, and he cooked with his feet. I remember going there as a kid, but I don't remember any of that. Is that all?
That story I hadn't heard.
Okay.
So this is the vacuuming shop. We have, and a lot of these pictures I had saved out of a dumpster because they were being thrown out of a building because nobody thought that they were of any value. So, the other one, whoops. The pictures that we have here are also the sumo wrestlers. If I go start this in, I'll make it quick on this one. These are some of the pickaxes that Chester Liu had saved. Is it Chester? Not Chester. Ernest Sam family. So we have the pickaxe parts. The other one, we used to have 3, and one of them kind of took off walking. But what, you guys know what these are? Railroad ties. These came from the Chinese railroad workers that settled up in Milliton. And then they were all gathered together and told that if they did not leave Millerton, they would be hung. So most of them did come down this way. We have some of the items, and these are two. We have a third one, but again, it developed legs. But this is from the African American blacksmith shop that was here in Fresno, Chinatown. But, and this is the box that came with the antique noodle maker. And they came and they established grand opening tonight, Gunlin Restaurant, 1407 Tulare Street. And this one we got from the daughter because they were selling the family home and nobody in the family wanted the items. And we opened it up and we said it had on how to be a U.S. citizen. So they had the books to it, the things from the, what was this one? Oh, that was one. So it all told people on how you can become a U.S. citizen as they were coming across. The other one that got returned to us, now this is the third box, I have broken two other ones. But these are items, and if some of you want to take a look at them, you could go ahead and pass them. We're not sure, we can't determine on how to find out if those are bakelite or actually ivory. But this is an entire box that was donated by a Caucasian gentleman, and he said that when he was a teenager, he was helping another guy empty out one of the buildings. And he said there were all of these, and all of these gambling implements there. And he asked him, he said, well, can I have them? And the guy said, yeah, I'm gonna just throw it out anyway. And so he had them in his garage for years. And his children said, you know when you die, you start throwing them out. So he brought them to us. He said it should come back to Chinatown because this is where they came from. We did an archaeological dig, the only one that's in Fresno, and what we found were below the fire line that actually had burnt half of Chinatown were these instruments that the archaeologists had found. The other one.
What year was that fire? Which one? Which fire was that? I know there was one in this late 1870s.
It might have been that because they dug pretty deep into the ground to find these. The other one that they also found, let's see if I can get this. And it's the only one. Whoa! The same archaeologist that did that dig helped. We had one of our buildings that a gentleman was willing to give us $300,000 for, which was more money than we had ever imagined. But he wanted it to be kind of a museum for his writing. But while he was clearing it out, and it was the Ego building in the back, there was an upright piano that a friend of my dad's learned how to play the upright piano, was stolen. Oh no, we went to the junkyard. 4-panel screen that matched the screens over at the Vaughn building. That was taken to a dumpster. And the gentleman's Schwinn bike, Mr. Ego's bike, that had a license that said Town of Fresno 1, and that was stolen. So we did not do well with that deal. I came back one day and I could hear this, and I went back. And it's the building that, if you see on the alley, is called the Ego building. And that's the one that we've had these fights with high-speed rail that kept saying, we're going to take it from you. We're going to, but we will also give you, if you want to sell it, $78,000. And we thought, no. And they said, why no? We said, because it's a historic asset to the area. So they kind of threatened us for about 5 years. And finally we said, take us to court. You know, we don't have money to defend ourselves, but we'll show up every day and it'll cost you money. So what we found out was that the preservation person who left last December had put 2 of the buildings, the building that sits right on, used to be Dick Avaki's building, they had the Chinese restaurant above, on a historic preservation list, and our building. So they can't be touched. Needless to say, high-speed rail was not happy, and the woman's job was changed quite a bit, so she decided to McIntyre. Some of you guys knew her, Kalana, who was wonderful. But while we were, thank you. So, and if you guys have any ideas who we could test it, but anyway, so that's how we have those. But while I went there one day, I could see this big piles behind the fence, and I could see little chips. I could see the cloisonne sticking out, and like this teapot that was broken. And what had happened was that the gentleman said that these things came out of the basement wall when it came out, and they were in his way. So they were using a shovel and a pickaxe to take the stuff up and throw them out. I said, please don't throw any more out until I can get a tarp, because as soon as you leave, our dear wonderful scavengers will go and take the stuff. Needless to say, I pissed them off. So they dumped everything in these 3 or 4 big trash cans and drug them in the building. So I got a hold of Karana got a hold of the archaeologist. She took all of the trash cans, cleaned everything, and these are the items that she had found. Now this is one of them that you'll look at. And basically when it says made in Japan, that's basically to show you that the taxes had been paid on this import project. But it's actually quite old. These are the two that cracked the hell out of me, and you guys need to pass them around to take a look at them. Okay. But what she did is, so we have quite a few of these that are, she cleaned them all, but they were shattered. We actually have 15 boxes of these items here. The other 3 boxes that were not pickaxed out of the wall are put back in the wall, and what she did is she saved all the things that were wrapping these, and they gave a visual history of the evacuation of Chinatown, because they were all from the daily papers. The family had the restaurant. They had 2 large restaurants, and one was upstairs and then downstairs, and another one was in the burnt building. But what they did is they put all of these away, hoping that they would be able to come home and then have these. So what we have found was that she believes that we have the largest collection of pre-World War II ceramics and cloisonne that were used in the restaurant business. And so they're here. They're in Chinatown. Would you believe it? No, but go ahead.
I keep hearing you say about the evacuation of Chinatown.
Try
What was the evacuation of Chinatown? You've said that multiple times today.
That's where the Japanese Americans
Right.
were
So that everybody had to leave.
out of the area, right? And what happened is you have a lot of the businesses were either closed. There used to be roving gangs that would take rifles and shoot off the emblems on the Buddhist temple, because part of the Buddhist emblem looks like the swastika, but it's a Sanskrit. And what people with the roving bands would do is they would shoot at the temple, or they would shoot at windows. So there are a couple stories, like the gentlemen that had the Komodo department store. The 2 brothers, when they came back from camp, slept out on the awning. It was an awning from the 2nd floor coming out. They would sleep there with their guns, and if anybody came by with a roving band, they'd kind of shoot at them. But for a lot of people, which is really interesting, the valley has one of the largest numbers of out marriages, meaning that for the Japanese American community, you had the initial generation here, people married Japanese. You had the 2nd generation, people married Japanese. You had my generation, which has pretty close to, 80+% are not married Japanese American. And so somebody else asked me why, and I said, there's part of it that my family never talked about being relocated, meaning taken from their homes. But what they were told was that they were not loyal U.S. citizens, that they were not, shouldn't really speak the language, nor a few other things. And so what we ingrained in my generation was a lot of us married other than Japanese American, which is kind of interesting, Because until you come to the fourth generation, which are in college now, you had a strong trend where there might not have been a Japanese American community left. And that was because a lot of people internalized that they were not right by just the issue of being taken and put in camps. So, but people are going past it. Now you had the, there was the public broadcast station here did one, Silent Sacrifice, that has received national coverage. But what you also had within my generation, when I was maybe in the Bay Area, we did the first pilgrimage to Tule Lake, and that was in the 70s, 80s. But there was only one Japanese American senior who was second generation who came on the bus. We had 3 buses. The rest of us were younger people. We went up to Tule Lake. We were met by the sheriff outside of town. We were escorted to the fairgrounds, and we were told that we had to stay in the fairgrounds because the people around the area, around Tule Lake, did not like the idea that we were coming up there and were threatening to shoot us. So for a lot of us at that time who were within the Yellow Power movement, Asian studies, and we just said, what the blank blank are you talking about? And so we stayed in the fairgrounds because we were not allowed out. And that was not that many years ago. So what you have is very strong, and what you have now, actually what I find take a great deal of pride in, is that you have a lot of Japanese Americans who are saying, no, you cannot separate families, no, you cannot put people into camps without their due rights. And I'm very proud of that generation that's standing forward to say that. So, unless you have the chance to change history, we will repeat it again and again and again.
Were those camps located at the fair and in Pinedale?
Oh, go ahead.
Is
I'm
that
sorry.
where they were located, in Pinedale and at the fair?
Pinedale was one of the assembly centers. And I think as far as my father, well, let me come around. I don't know if I have any more to show you, but yeah. With my mom was from the Gaslight District in San Diego. Are you familiar with the Gaslight District?
Yes.
It's the part that's all the city of San Diego says, oh, we're wonderful. But my mom used to work for the, excuse me, you're sneaking on one side of you. Used to work for Admiral Rangel with the Pacific Fleet. And Admiral Rangel, we actually have this ceramic doll that he had gotten from Yamamoto, I think, because he said, oh, if the FBI finds out that I got this from Yamamoto. So my mom was like their nanny and cook. So she could make great Southern food. Mrs. Rangel was part of the Tabasco family, the one that, you see the Avery's Tabasco, and on the bottom you see Avery Island. So I told my mom, I said, you mean you could have, been on an island? You didn't have? But my grandfather told her, no, you're not going to leave the camp and go, because Admiral Rangel had stopped at Poston, Arizona with his wife and the 2 kids, and they wanted my mom to go with them, and my grandfather wouldn't let them go. But in the meantime, when she was their cook, she had to stay at their house in Coronado. Some of you are familiar with Coronado. That because there were roving bands that were taking people off of buses and asking if they were a Chink or a Jap. And if you responded incorrectly, you were beaten up. So they kept her at their place in Coronado. And then they got her to wear a button that said, I'm a Chink. So she got home to the Gaslight District, and there was nothing there. The entire community was gone that had been the Japanese center. And she said there were curtains blowing in the windows. You could hear birds in cages that were there. You could see dogs and cats walking around, but no people. So she looked around, she finally found out where her family was, which was her father, mother, 3 sisters and a brother, that they had been taken out the day before and told to carry a suitcase, and that they were going to be taken to the racetrack. And so what they did is they ran the last race, pulled off the horses, changed the hay, moved the entire Japanese American community of San Diego into the horse stalls. And that's where my mom found her family. So she, I don't know how she did it, but she told them that she needed to catch up with her family. And so they had to run through all these records to figure out where they were. So they went on a train from San Diego to Poston, Arizona. And as far as I know that my dad and his family also went by train from Fresno, but several weeks to a month or 2 later, because the internal area was moved out not as fast as the coastal range. So that's kind of, but I have to tell you that I never knew there were camps while I was growing up. When my parents would meet another Japanese American person, they would say, "Oh, what camp were you in?" Oh, and they'd say, "Oh, I was in Poston, I was in Arizona," whatever. And I, for the life of me, thought they were talking about summer camp. I had no fucking, no idea.
It's because they didn't want to talk about it.
They didn't talk about it. They wouldn't talk about it. And it was only after when I was in Sacramento and we started doing the tour, the pilgrimages to the outlying areas. So several years after that, after my parents were gone, my sister and I went to the Poston reunion. And which is interesting because it's on a reservation. And the reservation has been trying to save some of the area because they have the adobe bricks that you still see. The East Bay folks that learned how to make adobe bricks, we could see their handprints. But that's how they made a hospital. That's how they made a school. That's how they went and built up the community. But that's also where my oldest brother, who was stillborn, my dad was early released to, I know I'm boring you guys, I apologize on this stuff, but he was early released to Minneapolis, to a German-American tire factory guy who had gotten lots of families out from the camp, the men. And then he was going to send for my mom, but she was pregnant at the time. She, for some reason, was on a chair. Don't ask me why she was on a chair. She fell, and the cord wrapped around my brother's neck, so he was stillborn. So we have a stack of letters that I still have to figure out what to do with, but my dad, who I never realized would have saved him, saved from the first one all the way to the telegram that said, "Sue is okay, the baby died. You need to come back." And so there's a stack of letters that would start out, because he was sent out of camp early in their marriage, and so these letters would start, "My dear, darling friend." And so I could only get past like one letter without crying. But so that's how their relationship developed, by these letters that she had sent him up until the last telegram that said, "Oh, my brother had died." So he's somewhere. They never returned his ashes to the camp, so he's somewhere in Parker, which is the little town next to it. So my sister and I said we should have gotten some sand, put it in a container, and said, "Oh, here he is," just that kind of stuff, because our whole family gets cremated. For Japanese Americans, you're either buried or cremated, so we're the cremated kind of folks. But another question.